Hello, Oasis.
What up?
Hello.
We're back.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Or good morning, depending on when you're listening to
That's
this.
a good point.
Right?
But not in the evening?
Yeah.
Or
good night.
I want to know, comment below on the YouTube channel if you listen to this at
what
night.
hour of the day do you
When do
typically
you listen to this?
listen?
Hey, listen.
I think YouTube probably has analytics for that.
Yeah, that would be good.
I would bet you can see what hour of
Do
the
we have
day
enough
most people.
views for those analytics?
What hour of the day do you guys most engage your podcast?
I don't think I ever really listen to podcasts after like lunch.
Really?
Almost ever.
Okay.
It's sporadic.
Yeah, you're right.
I follow the spirit.
Just whenever your phone leads you, the spirit leads you to your phone, to the podcast app, to that. I'm an afternoon, early evening guy.
Yeah, I'm on morning for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Usually driving, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
Boom, roasted.
Yeah, it's cold out. It's like negative 20 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's a brutal week.
Weak stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting up into like midterms and, like you can see the spring is coming, but like it's not coming. And so I think one of the things like we're seeing in our community right now is just a sense of hurry and anxiety and stress, especially for our college students with all of that kind of just coming up on your plate. And there's this theologian and author, his name was Dallas Willard, and he was asked like if there's one word that you could use to describe who Jesus is, and he goes, relaxed. And that is wild to me because Jesus' life is nuts. Like he's like constantly like healing. Like you look, I think it's at Mark 1 where Jesus has like this huge day of ministry and he's relaxed. And then it's like, I look at my life and I'm not relaxed. And I don't like it.
You got almost nothing on your plate compared to Jesus.
Like I go to my 9 to 5 and I feel overwhelmed.
But what an interesting statement. Dallas Willard is a brilliant theologian, author, pastor, right? Pastor in context? Yeah. He just has such good work, and some of his works are still being released by his foundation. They're taking his manuscripts or his sermons and re-releasing books. But to sum up Jesus in one word, I mean, that is a daunting task. That is an impossible task. But to pick a word like relaxed, that feels, it's shocking, right?
Yeah, because I don't agree with it. But,
I know you don't agree with it, but like, I think that's what he's trying. It's some of the shock
I agree
factor.
with the other statement that we're going to say.
Go ahead.
More so than Jesus being relaxed. That hurry is the greatest enemy of the spiritual life. That I agree with.
Because he's also the one with the quote that hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil.
That's Carl Jung.
Oh, Carl Jung.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who, they're all him
Same vein. Realm of
it's like Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
They're just like, one of you three said
these
it.
three, yeah. John Mark Comer, Dallas Willard. Although John McCoy got his stuff from Dallas Willard and Carl Jung. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life. I agree with that for sure. I don't know if Jesus was relaxed. I think he was peaceful. He was always busy. It was the right busy.
I do think, though, if we were to get to spend a day in the physical presence of Jesus, which we all long to one day do, that I do believe his relaxed nature or his peaceful nature will be one that's striking.
Yeah, that's fair. That is good.
There's something about his holiness that, of course, right, it'll just blow your mind. There's something about his love and his kindness, but the one that I think will probably surprise a lot of people is just his relaxed nature or his calm demeanor.
Calm. I like calm better.
Yeah.
I do like calm.
I just remember I went to this retreat center once, and I walked into their cafeteria, and up on their fire mantle was this big picture of Jesus smiling. But that's some of it, is like this misinterpretation of Jesus as this nose to the grindstone Messiah who gets things done, who's always pushing this agenda, who is like on top of it at all times, no messing around. And then like to humanize him is, no, he probably walked in this slow nature of his kingdom purpose with gentleness and kindness, like he talks about, with joy and peace. Like, I don't know, man. That's cool. I really like that picture of Jesus. We should sit with that more often.
Yeah, that's good.
I just want to know how fast Jesus actually walked.
Yep.
I had a friend, he was an international student from the Bahamas, and he was on our campus, and I was talking to him one day, and I said, what's like the biggest difference you experienced from Indiana to being in the Bahamas? And I thought he was going to say the weather. And he was like, you guys walk so fast. And he was the slowest walker of all time. Yeah. And we would almost be late to our classes because he walked so slow. And sometimes I just wonder, how fast did Jesus actually walk? If he was calm and relaxed, then he wasn't hurried. He knew he wasn't going to be late. Like,
well, there was nothing to be late to.
Yeah, well, I mean, did he build a calendar? Probably not.
No, there was no schedule.
Yeah.
There was no class to go to or 8 o'clock job he had to start.
Yeah, he had discerned will from the Father where he knew where he was going.
What
and
to
he knew,
do, and what was next.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm. And then you add in the whole cultural context of the Middle East, where time relevance is completely different than oftentimes in the Midwest. And there's the globalization of culture that's kind of happening, and so I'm sure it's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was in my intercultural communication class, my professor would talk about how there was a norm in upper African countries that they sometimes would leave for work an hour to 2 hours early because they would go on this journey of meeting their neighbors and having having conversations. Yes. And so they would have these work days that started with long communal
love it,
like journeys. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm like, how many minutes does it take me to get from my house to Grace Point, and how fast can I drive to get there? That's how I feel sometimes. And so Jesus is just like on this daily life journey to be with people in the Middle East context. He was a part. Sick. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
But I think for us, when we hear hurry, I think a lot of times we just think about like trying to rush around and do errands. But I kind of want to just diagnose and define this a bit more. Hurry is a sense of being frantic and anxious about what you're doing. It's being so preoccupied with the task at hand or the task that's upcoming that you completely miss out on what's happening right now. And so this can look like constant multitasking, impatience, and frustration. Even for some of us struggling with our relationships, it might be hurry because we're so distracted that we can't sit with someone and actually have a deep relationship with them. It can look like neglecting our spiritual practices, and I think over time this can lead to burnout and exhaustion. And we'll get to it later, but like hurry, like John Mark Comer says, it's violence against the soul. And so it's not just a physical problem, it's actually like sucking the life out of your soul the more and more you hurry.
Yeah. Well, and I think I even want to have you reread that list again, because I think that list functions as an incredible check engine light for the weary soul, for the hurried soul. It's like, okay, where I don't remember exactly. Read that list like constant multitasking again.
Yeah, constant multitasking, impatience, frustration, superficial relationships, neglecting spiritual practices, burnout, and exhaustion.
And so as you hear that, you can sit there and think, do I feel those things? Are those realities and true in my life? Because as I hear that list, I'm like, oh, and I can see those as red flags when I'm unhealthy in my life. It's so obvious when we take time to sit and think about it. But even as you're listening, like, do you experience this hurried nature? And you're like, well, like I'm busy, but are these things that you walk in on a consistent basis? And if so, this podcast is for you.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think the second question we ask off of that is, so why am I feeling this? Like, where is this all stemming from? And I think there's a couple of places. Hurry is a response to inadequacy, fear, and guilt. And so I think one of the reasons why we feel this is because we feel like we're behind. Like, we talked about at Oasis with, like, Mary and Martha, like the story of Mary trying to serve everybody and Martha sitting at the feet of Jesus. Martha was oh, my bad. You can flip it around. Martha serving everybody because she was so, like, she felt behind in cultural expectations, and she completely missed what God invited her into in freedom, but like she was just overwhelmed the whole time.
Yeah, it's real. Those three, right? In response, how often do you feel inadequate, and then you're prompted to try and produce or perform in a way that makes you now feel adequate? How often are you nervous or anxious or fearful about a future or a current present that if you could just do more and achieve more and create more, then you wouldn't have that? If you could control more, or this sense of guilt where like I'm not enough and I don't have enough, and so I'm going to produce and work and strive and run and in order to not feel those. I mean, it's numbing in a whole different sense of the word.
Yeah, I think I don't know where I'd put it underneath in inadequacy or fear. But even if sometimes you enter into seasons that force you to push your capacity because things get added, whether your choice or not. And so it's even in that, I don't know where you throw it into, but it's then I have to, in keeping up with that pace to keep going, the reason we maybe feel hurry or busy in those seasons is I haven't set up healthy rhythms and then the season comes and therefore I feel frantic and tense. Like I think of hurry as the disposition and like busyness as the outcome of it. It's like I have this disposition of always this like unhealthy urgency to continue to move forward, which inadequacy, fear, and guilt. But also just sometimes there's just seasons where your pace gets pushed and that's not bad, or your capacity gets pushed and that's not bad. But you have a sense of hurry because either in the pushing of the pace you feel inadequate to keep up, or you haven't had set up healthy rhythms to know how to handle the pace.
That's where stamina comes in, right? Like this just concept of stamina that we apply to exercise is true across different realities, including the spiritual life and the soul, right? When you get pushed, so say you're a freshman coming into college, those first couple weeks are going to push you probably as you try to figure out new rhythms. Yep. And then you establish the sense of stamina that, okay, I know I can walk in this. And then that next semester, you might have a heavier course load. Or when you graduate from college and you become a young adult and you have to work an 8 to 5, but you still have to do everything that you used to do, like work out and have friends and manage your finances. And so then in that first season, you see a lot of young adults really get frantic and they feel overwhelmed because there's so much that they now have to navigate. And yet, as you do that with God's grace and you establish healthy rhythms, you begin to establish a stamina where you can do that. And then you add a significant other and it throws everything off. You add a kid, it throws everything off. You change your job, it throws everything off. And so there is seasons where you get pushed, and yet they all come back to what are the core established rhythms and systems in your life that can help you process.
Well, that's the beauty of why a part of this conversation talks about, when you talk about Jesus being relaxed, it's okay, as followers of Jesus, we want to model the life. We want to step into the life that Jesus is inviting us into, which is an unhurried life. And so when those seasons hit, okay, Jesus, how do I model you in this? What do I need to adjust or not adjust?
And that's where, so John Mark Comer wrote the book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, pretty much dominated the Christian novel community for a period of years, right? And I think God's grace was on it, super heavy.
Yeah.
And in that, busy became a curse word. And I still have a little bit of just like pushback on that.
I do too.
Because busy isn't a curse word in seasons. I have busy seasons. When students come back, I am very, very busy. When a new semester starts, I'm very busy. At the end of a semester, I'm very busy. But that can't be my general disposition. That can't be my foundational starting point of. And that's where I think busy does become when we wear it as a badge of honor and pride, rather than just recognizing you can still have a busy season. That's okay. Now, how do you navigate that?
I think what you said it there, when busy becomes an identity in seasons of rest, we're not resting. And that's the issue.
That's good.
Because like during the school year, we're doing crazy things. But then like May hits, June, July, August hit, and we're running a lot slower. And one of the things Aaron Cloud, our pastor here, has said has been like, we can't outpace the Spirit. And I think sometimes the Spirit does lead us into spaces where we are sprinting and we are doing a lot of work, but the Spirit is strengthening us. And then the Spirit leads us to places where sometimes we want to keep sprinting, but we're being asked to slow down. And I think part of Hurry is navigating those two things. You have a quote from someone where it's like laziness is like working when you're
Tim
supposed
Keller,
to be resting and resting when you're supposed to be working. I think part of the conversation on Hurry is figuring out, how can I actually work and how can I actually rest?
That's good.
But I think, like we've hit on the danger of it. Like it kills your soul. It hinders your intimacy with God. When you're rushing around, you can't even hear your own thoughts. So how are you going to hear the still small voice of God?
Say it.
The hurry shapes our rhythms and who we are. I think it can, right? Which is why it is the danger of it. I think it's, when you enter, that's why I agree. I want to push back against busyness, because I think Jesus was busy. It was just always the right busy. Like everything he chose, like that's why, you talk about a rule of life. Well, you set up a rule of life around your core priorities. So if a core priority for you is silence, you're going to set but if I'm silent in solitude, I'm not busy, but I am, because I'm doing that thing. Like I'm busy doing the thing that I'm prioritizing. And so hurry shapes my rhythms and who I am, if I already don't have a specific set of values and priorities and following Jesus set and established, which is why, exactly what you said, kills intimacy with God. You start to struggle to hear his voice. It can damage your relationships. You can't be ultimately present with people. Like, I think John Mark Comer calls it
hurry sickness.
Hurry sickness for sure is the thing, but also in what we are not doing is slowing down to the pace of love that Jesus had. Like the pace Jesus walked was a pace of love. And so in that, if I'm hurried, I am not aware and therefore can't love well, where damages relationships, kills my intimacy with Jesus.
Yeah, it destroys your inner peace. And that's what we've talked about. That's what all three of those, inadequacy, fear, and guilt, like hurry compounds and couples with anxiety to just spiral into a really messy emotional state, because I'm feeling like I need to do all these things, and then I feel anxious about all those things, which pushes me to try and do more things, which makes me more anxious. And it's just this tornado of emotional unequilibrium as we try to navigate how do I do it all? And so we don't have this sense of inner peace, but it also blinds us to purpose, because when you're so inwardly focused on your own turmoil or your own mess, it removes you from asking the question, where is God and what is he doing, not only in my story, but in others? And so we don't walk into rooms with other people and say, how can I serve and be the hands and feet of Jesus here? We walk into rooms with other people feeling like, okay, how do I get what I need to get done in this place? How do these people serve me in this place? How do I put up my best foot forward in this place? How do I not present as anxious? We start asking all these questions that are internally focused, and it removes us from what God has actually called his people to be.
Well, that's why, like that quote you said earlier from Carl Jung, hurry is not isn't of the devil, it is the devil.
Yeah.
It's because what the enemy wants to do for us is convince us that adding another commitment is the right thing to do in the midst of a hurry or busy feeling season. It's, well, if I just add this extra credit, one more extra credit every semester, I can graduate early. It's like, okay, that's true. Is it the right thing?
Yeah.
If I just add an extra hour of the day, I can make enough money to get the thing that I would like. But is that the right thing? And it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Or dehumanizes
It,
you.
yes.
It turns you into a machine.
That's a great word.
If you're consistently adding to your plate and you're expecting the same output, you're treating yourself like a computer, and you're not a computer. Your brain is not a chip. It is an actual organ that needs rest and play and delight with the Lord, and you're not a machine.
That's where that maybe it's a church thing. I don't know. It sometimes makes me cringe, but it's honestly helpful. Is you're not a human. You're not a human doing. You're a human being.
I love that.
But it's
give me
true.
all the cheesy things.
Because the part of Christianity that leans cheesy in some of those quotes, sometimes those cheesy quotes are the most helpful.
Yeah.
That's why they've become cheesy.
Yeah.
But you're not a human doing, you're a human being,
so
because
good.
God has wired you to be with him in his presence, and he has wired you and created you to be with people. And when we rewire ourselves in our brokenness to not, now we're doing for God, or we're doing for ourselves, or we're doing for people, it's a rewiring of our system of what it means to be a human.
Yeah, so good.
And so I think a few places where we've seen hurry play out, the first one is definitely school. Just the constant rush to maintain your grades. We go on campus every now and then, and I just see people. I was sitting in campus yesterday, and I just saw people so tired that they fell asleep while studying. That's how intense this hurry has been, that we have just neglected our own rest.
But even in that, right, I think I love what Ben said, is hurry doesn't necessarily always have to shape your, but it will if you don't shape it yourself. Because so many college students I meet with, the grind of school doesn't stop. Right? You always will have assignments. You always will have tests. You always will have, if you really can't stand that, choose a new major, right? Drop out and find a different, those are options.
Go longer.
And
go slower.
Yes. And yet, you can establish a rhythm and a routine and a system that will help you not feel overwhelmed by those things. But most college students don't. And so they wait until the test is 2 days away, and then they start studying. And now we're overwhelmed and we're frantic. And we wait until the homework is due, and it's due at midnight, and it's 9 p.m. And it's going to take me 4 hours, and I only got 3. And now we're hurrying, and we're busy, and it's well, you don't have a system in place
for sure.
to actually support a life of an unhurriedness. So it's, well, that's not feasible for me. I think there's college students listening right now who say, well, I can't avoid the hurriness. This is just the season God has me in for 4 years. And yet 4 years is enough to crush your soul.
1 week is enough to crush your soul.
So that's real. The only B Abby got in her basically college career was the semester we started dating, because I threw her off her rhythms of an established schedule so that school didn't feel overwhelmed. She was the one who went through the notes every day.
Yeah.
So she didn't have to cram the week of the test. So I threw her off a healthy rhythm. Sometimes you just get thrown into seasons where your rhythms get thrown off.
Totally.
I think another one is jobs, especially for people who are graduating or who are young adults. Our jobs look very interesting. They're not the high-paying jobs. And so then there's the cultural pressure to find a way to get to a high-paying job. There's the pressure, if you're still in school, to make sure you're doing all of the right activities to get the internship. There's a lot of pressure just to make sure that you're setting yourself up for a future success. And so there's the endless grind of, I got to update my resume, sign up for this club, become the president of this organization so that way someone else wants to hire me.
Or you're a young adult in a job and you want to advance in that job, and so I'm going to put in extra hours every week, and I'm going to say yes to every commitment because I don't want to be the person who says no. But sometimes no is the best yes, because no actually frees you up to teach the people around you what you stand for and why you're walking in that.
My prof would tell me, whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Totally.
So you already know how to say no. Just change what you're saying yes to.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's social pressure, like you want to keep up your friends. We have a huge fear of missing out. Like, you're really not going to miss out on much. It's okay to say no to your friends. It's also okay to say yes to your friends, but like navigate that expectation. Yeah. And then I think sometimes we have time to pause and be with God, but we are so anxious and unsettled and thinking about so many other things, we can't actually sit down and hear from him when we try and meet with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on the life of Jesus a little bit, but Jesus is the model for slowing down. And I think it really starts with an understanding of his identity and his purpose. And I love the baptism story of Jesus because before he's done anything, the Father speaks over him and says, "This is my son whom I love and I'm well pleased." So before Jesus ever produced anything, God spoke love over him. And then out of that, he starts his ministry. Yeah. And so his purpose was always the Father's will. And then when you even see him getting interrupted, those purposes are still there.
Yeah, and you already referenced Mark 1. Mark 1 is one of my favorite passages of text. It is the craziest day ever. And Mark writes in a way that's hyper condensed, and so was it one 24-hour period? I don't know for sure. But what Jesus accomplishes in one chapter is unbelievable. He's casting out demons, he's teaching, he's traveling, he's calling disciples. It's unbelievable. And then he goes to sleep. Who knows at what hour? And it says he wakes up while it's still night, and he goes and he retreats. And in the midst of busyness, he chooses to retreat to be with the Father, to find soul rest, which will fuel him. He's like, that statement, I don't live on the bread that you have. I live on the bread that comes to my heavenly Father. Like, I have food that you don't even know about. And like, there's just this truth that Jesus modeled with his life that looked so radically different than the way I'm tempted to live my life, and the way I think most people are. It's okay, I had a really busy day. I better get extra sleep tonight so that I'm better tomorrow. Or, I got to stay up extra late so that I can get that thing done, and then I'm going to have to sleep in. Like, it's just this brokenness of where we find true rest in the midst of hurry. When Jesus cut sleep in order to be with his heavenly Father, which garnered him direction, gave him discernment, where he could begin to again the next day walk in clarity. Yep. And how many times do we miss that
For
gap?
sure. Yeah.
And so we walked and we did a really good, like, you maybe had an excellent day walking with God and doing what he had called you to, but you didn't retreat. And so the next day you showed up and you tried to do the same thing you did the day before, but that's not what God called you to day two.
Yep.
He might have called you to something completely different, but you missed the rest moment. And so then you missed discernment.
Yeah, and that's the core way he understood his purpose and identity. So why he modeled and was able to live a simple, slow life, which is what he asks us to model. Like what he says, walk with me and work with me, watch how I do it. Yeah. Learn the rhythms in which I've walked. Learn the way, like, I'm inviting you into this. Do what I do. Everything he does is purposeful, and his mission is aligned with God, so he knows what to say yes to and what to say no to because of the consistency of going back and being with the Father.
I don't know the statistic, but someone has done the research to give a percentage of the miracles that Jesus does that are actually interruptions, and I'm pretty sure it's almost all of them, if I remember. If I remember right, I can't remember the statistics, so I'm not going to throw a number out there. But almost every single one of Jesus's miracles happens out of an interruption. Like, we've preached Mark 5 twice this semester, and both of those are interruptions. Jesus has traveled across the sea. He gets out in Jairus. How do you say it? What, did I say it right?
Oh, he goes to the Gerasenes, but he meets Jairus.
Jairus. See, I always say it wrong. She always corrects me. I say Jairus. I moved the I. But there's a song?
Jairus.
I don't know.
Your name.
I'm so, my cognitive pathways will always say Jairus.
We get it, man.
But he falls at his feet, and that's an interruption. I mean, Jesus has this purpose that he's going to. And then, of course, as he's going on that way, the woman falls at his feet, and that's an interruption. And then he goes, and the people are laughing or at him that he would think he can raise the dead, and that's an interruption because he's now having to deal with, like, in that passage alone, he does multiple miracles, and yet every single one of them is caveated off of this interruption. And so if Jesus came and said, "This is exactly what I'm going to do today by my will and my strength," but he's like, "No, like, what, Father, what do you have for me?" Yep. And so, he does some incredible work, but out of this place of margin, because he can follow God wherever the Spirit chooses to lead.
Yeah, it's path. Like, he follows the path God has in front of him. Nothing is, I'm going to go attack this task or responsibility. And yet we want to add task responsibility versus just what is that path. So like we get so focused on the details of what the day or my life should look like, not on the overall path of just what is the direction in which, God, you are leading me. Yeah, interesting.
We were in San Diego last year, and there was a speaker talking to our staff, and one of the questions he asked is, if the Holy Spirit planned your calendar and your agenda, what would be on it? And that was a really convicting question for me, and I think that kind of hits on what Jesus is doing. Because I think to us, it feels like interruptions, but to Jesus, it wasn't interruption because he was already following the Spirit, and he already had margin planned out in his schedule. He didn't have to be anywhere. He wasn't running late. Like, he was already on time because he was following the path that God had for him. But we are people who, like, every single minute of my day is in a Google Calendar, color-coded, and I don't have margin. Like, I can't run late for this meeting. I can't run late for the meeting after that. So I don't have time to pause. So when I see someone at Cool Beans and they want to talk to me, it feels like an interruption. I think just, like, one of the simplest things that we can see from Jesus is that he wasn't hurried because he knew that, like, he had the time to stop and to pause.
Yeah. Or how much of Jesus' ministry is just done out of presence with others. Like, I love the quote where the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and Jesus' ministry was done around the table. And so he's just present with people. Even like the Lord's Supper is this Passover meal where he revolutionizes the Passover meal. But the disciples didn't come in knowing Jesus is about to lay down this incredible framework of what the new... They showed up and they said, all right, this guy said we can set up in the upper room. And so they sit down to eat the meal that they've eaten their entire lives, and Jesus begins into this teaching because he's just present with them. Yeah. Like, that is mind-boggling. It's so cool that he just has this relational proximity to people, and as he rubs shoulders with people, he says, hey, this is what the kingdom of God is like, and hey, this is where I can bring correction, and this is what it looks like to follow me. And like, how often do we just have enough presence with people without agenda that we can lean into what God is calling us to in that place?
That's good. Yeah. I mean, he rested, practiced the Sabbath, and all of these things. It's Jesus literally scheduled his life around the things that were essential and important to him. And so, like, the solution to push back against hurriness and busyness in our life is, how do I prioritize my life around that which is essential? And then what do I believe it? If I looked at my calendar, my schedule now, what does it tell me about what I think is essential? And then there are things that you just have to do, which is real. So in the things you have to do, put down and do them. And just scheduling your life around, living your life around the things that are essential. So he stopped, like he ceased. Like, God established a day of rest for us because he knew in sin we were going to have the propensity to add commitment after commitment after commitment. Like the temptation to say, if I just had more time in the day, I'd be able to do that thing. I'd be able to pray more. I'd be able to read my Bible more. I'd be able to... No, you wouldn't. You would just continue to add things more that damage your soul and not actually be really intentional. And so it's like, it's not about more time. It's start just scheduling your life around the things that matter. And the things that matter are the things that matter to Jesus.
What's the Martin Luther quote? I have so much to do today, and I must spend the day in 3 hours in prayer, right? Like, I hear that quote and I think, what? Right. My propensity is, I have so much to do today. How can I squeeze in time with God so that I can still get done the rest of the stuff? Yeah. And he says, no. I have so much to do today. I better pray extra on the front end and make that my rock, my priority, so that I can actually accomplish what God has called. That is so backwards to the way that I have been, not made, but like how I've been trained and how I've walked my whole life. And so that reorienting of this whole conversation of we have been ingrained and taught, even unconsciously, to walk in hurriedness. And yet the opposite of that says, like, slow down, prioritize your life, create margin, be with God. And if you look at that life where we started, you would go, that's crazy. Like, this is not like a small tweak. Like, eliminating hurry is not a small tweak on the dial. It's throwing out the whole machine and starting over.
And I think,
but if that's the way of Jesus,
I think the enemy's really good too. Like, once you start to try and unhurry your life, to make you feel like that's actually not going to do anything. Like, oh, you're going to add margin. It's really not going to fill you. Like, you're not going to feel different, like, immediately. Because we live in an instant gratification culture. We want our 5 minutes of quiet time to make us feel like we have 100% energy. But quiet time is not the same as taking a nap. Like, quiet time nourishes your soul, not just your physical rest. And so I think the enemy loves to convince us that it's not worth it to stop and rest because God's not going to deliver.
Yeah,
That's good.
give us the 2 application questions, and we'll cut this off.
Slow
Yeah,
down.
the first one is, what in my life needs to be cut out? And really the thought behind this is that a lot of times in church culture we say, well, let me just add another thing to my plate. But that just perpetuates the problem of hurry. And so what in your life needs to be cut out? Is it, I watch 1 episode less of The Office. I have a night where I am by myself, like just with the Lord. I have a morning that I will sleep less to be with him, and then go from there and add in time to be devoted to God, add in time to be unhurried and just present with others. And then the last one is, who or what is shaping my purpose? We see in the life of Jesus, he's able to rest in God, and he's able to have a purpose that flows from an identity rooted in the fact that he is the Son of God. And so as you are a child of God, your identity and your purpose and the things that you do in your life are shaped by God's truth, by what God says, and you're calling to know him and make more disciples. And so a lot of times we receive mixed messages on that, but our true calling and our true purpose is rooted in that. And so just kind of look at what habits and rhythms and opportunities are keeping me from actually living that out.
That's good.
That's so good.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think, I love both of those. Get yourself a time audit. See where you spend your time.
See it.
Cut some stuff out.
See it.
Add some
Or integrate.
rest in. All right, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Boom. Roasted.
We're just gonna talk
We're just
real.
and then it's gonna fade out.
Yeah.
Listen,
Nobody
we all
turn the.
have to-
We're
we
gonna
all
sit
have
here
to
for
make a
5
decision.
minutes in silence, and nobody
I
can
like
turn
it.
the podcast off.
Yes,
I
please.
veto.
Collective silence. All right. Ready, set, go.